Sustainable Development Policy Institute, SDPI, and our esteemed partners, the South Asia Economic Summit, SAIS, and United Nations Economic Social Commission for Asia and Pacific, UNSCAP. I, Dr. Khalid Waleed, Research Fellow at SDPI, warmly welcome you all to the inaugural plenary of SDPI's flagship 28th Sustainable Development Conference, SDC, titled Sustainable Development in the Emerging World Disorder. This year's conference is being held in conjunction with 9th South and Southwest Asia Sub-Regional Forum on Sustainable Development, on transformative, equitable, innovative, and coordinated actions for 2030 Agenda and its SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals for a sustainable future for all. And the 16th South Asia Economic Summit, focusing on exploring innovations and policies in the circular economy, and the 3rd Sustainable Expo, themed collaborations for climate smart future. Ladies and gentlemen, these collaborating events partners, together these landmark events reflect SDPI's enduring commitment to convening diverse global and regional stakeholders in pursuit of resilience, equity, and climate smart future for all. The theme for today's conference and opening plenary is Sustainable Development in the Emerging World Disorder. Ladies and gentlemen, this title perfectly captures the spirit of our times, a world undergoing profound transformations, where the quest for sustainable development must navigate the shifting contours of global uncertainty and regional interdependence. We are deeply honored to have among us the distinguished gathering of thought leaders, policy makers, and scholars who continue to guide our collective vision for sustainable South Asia and beyond. On behalf of Team SDPI and our esteemed conference partners, I thank our chief guest, Dr. Musaddiq Malik, Federal Minister for Climate Change and Environmental Coordination. Guest of honor, Her Excellency, Ms. Sayyida Rizwana Hassan, Advisor to the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Bangladesh. Our distinguished speakers, Mr. Muhammad Yahya, UN Resident Coordinator and Humanitarian Coordinator, Pakistan. Professor Kazuhiko Takuchi, President, Institute for Global Environmental Strategies, Japan. Dear distinguished guests, we are grateful for you for gracing this august gathering today. As we begin this prestigious ceremony, may I invite Ambassador Shafkat Kakakhel, Chairperson, Board of Governors, Sustainable Development Policy Institute, Pakistan, for his welcome remarks. Ambassador Kakakhel.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Honorable Dr. Musaddiq Malik, Federal Minister for Climate Change and Environmental Coordination. Honorable Sayyida Rizwana Hassan, Advisor, the Government of Bangladesh for Environment and Forests. Muhammad Yahya, Coordinator for the United Nations System in Islamabad. On behalf of the Board of Governors of the Sustainable Development Institute, I wish to extend a warm welcome to all of you to this opening plenary of SDPI's 28th Sustainable Development Conference. The 16th South Asia Economic Summit, and United Nations Economic Commission for Asia Pacific's 9th South and Southwest Asia Forum on Sustainable Development. These events are being held simultaneously from today, 4th November, until 7th November, here at this beautiful campus of Allama Iqbal Open University. It is highly gratifying for SDPI to host such important sub-regional meetings of the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific and the South Asia Economic Summit. I extend a special welcome to the participants of these distinguished forums and acknowledge their notable contributions to the promotion of sustainable development in our large, diverse, and dynamic Asia-Pacific region. I hope your stay with us will be comfortable, enjoyable, and productive. Distinguished guests, the overarching theme of SDC 28 is sustainable development in the emerging world disorder. This theme seeks to take cognizance of multiple events, trends, and issues that have exacerbated the challenges to achieving peace, security, stability, and sustainable development on an equitable basis. These include, but are by no means limited to, the wars in Eurasia and Palestine, which have caused huge human losses and enormous material destruction. They have placed unbearable burdens on the multilateral system, including the United Nations and its various agencies, funds, and programs that have been painstakingly developed since the founding of the United Nations 80 years ago. Complex threats to peace, prosperity, and human well-being, such as the impacts of climate change, have grown exponentially, even as our collective will to counter them seems to have receded. The international community has been jolted by the open defiance and outright rejection of scientific findings by countries that were once at the forefront of scientific inquiry, research, and development. Support for developing countries' efforts to protect their fragile and vulnerable economies from the adverse consequences of global warming and climate change has remained woefully inadequate. There has also been a worrying resurgence of unilateral protectionism in interstate trade. As a result of these negative trends, the implementation of the United Nations Development Agenda based on the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, adopted through an impeccable global consensus in 2015, that is a decade ago, has remained, unfortunately, insufficient and uneven. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the annual SDCs, Sustainable Development Conferences of the SDPI, have consistently served as platforms bringing together policymakers, including parliamentarians, academic researchers, representatives of multilateral, financial, and development institutions, academics, the media, and civil society leaders from South Asia and beyond. Together, they deliberate on sustainable development challenges and explore pathways to address them through cooperation and collaboration, including regional cooperation. The SDC agenda is invariably driven by the imperative of promoting sustainable development encompassing sustained economic growth, environmental protection, and social equity and justice. Accordingly, the plenaries and special sessions of the conference focus on the most urgent socio-economic and environmental issues and the ways and means of countering and overcoming them. Distinguished participants, Dr. Abid Suleiman, Executive Director of SDPI, will provide further information on the discussions and other activities scheduled until Friday, 7th November. Once again, I would like to wish you all and welcome you and wish you an enjoyable and productive stay in Islamabad. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Kakakhel. Now, now I would like to invite Professor Dr. Nasir Mahmood, the Vice Chancellor, representing our co-host Allama Iqbal Open University, Pakistan, for his welcome remarks. Sir.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This is indeed an honor and immense pleasure for me to welcome all of you on behalf of Allama Iqbal Open University to a very important and well-placed event organized by basically SDPI. We are very pleased to be partners with SDPI beyond this event as well. We have our students working with them. We have some other research agenda which is shared between two organizations, and we're looking forward to strengthen these ties in the coming days, with every coming day. I welcome all of you, all delegates from within country and abroad, for joining us in this conference here at a very beautiful campus of Allama Iqbal Open University. I would urge all of you to take out some time during the sessions and visit the campus and enjoy its environment. Islamabad is fortunately, this is best time of the year in terms of weather here. It's very pleasant weather, and I hope that you will find out some time on the sidelines of your sessions to enjoy that environment. I'm honored to welcome Dr. Musaddiq Malik here, Honorable Minister Sayyida Rizwana Hassan for being there in this session. Muhammad Yahya, Abid Suleiman Saab, and Shafqat Kakakhel Saab, and all other colleagues here sitting in the hall, for joining us in the opening session of this conference and enlightening us on the issues which are facing us. As far as conference is concerned, the topics are concerned, we are faced with several challenges which relates to our discussions in this conference. And I believe that our learned colleagues from different parts of the world will help us understand the challenges and will come up with solutions which will be defining our future. The issues are immense, and I hope that we'll be talking about them, having deliberations on geopolitical instability in the world, economic disparities, climate urgencies, information disorders, social polarization, unemployment, population growth, and so on. There are so many of them. I would again welcome all of you and looking forward to have 4 really fruitful days till 7th November. And all of you, when going back, will have much more knowledge and much more ways to address these challenges when we'll be leaving this conference on 7th November. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Nasir Mahmood. Now, for the introductory note, I would like to invite Dr. Abid Qayyum Solari, the Executive Director, Sustainable Development Policy Institute, and Chairman, Board of Directors, National Disaster Risk Management Fund, and DRMF. Dr. Abid, please.
Thank you, Khalid Wali. Honorable and distinguished guests at the head table, the guests and delegates, especially from the following 21 countries, Australia, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Canada, China, Denmark, Germany, Indonesia, Japan, Kenya, Thailand, Maldives, Mauritius, Nepal, Philippines, Sri Lanka, Switzerland, Turkey, UAE, UK, and USA, Excellencies, colleagues, and friends. Welcome to Islamabad and to the 28th edition of Sustainable Development Conference. For nearly 3 decades, this forum has stood as the region's intellectual commons, where research meets policy, where ideas meet responsibility, and where optimism meets realism. This year's theme, Sustainable Development in the Emerging World Disorder, capture the moods of our time. When we announced this theme early in the year, very few could have imagined how swiftly the world's sense of order would unravel. Today, uncertainty has deepened across every front. The familiar pillars of progress, trade integration, multilateralism, and predictable growth are weakening. Geopolitical alignments are shifting faster than our institutions can adapt. Climate extremes have become more frequent, more costly, and more political. Water, which once used to be considered as source of life, is getting weaponized. And technology, once hailed as the great equalizer, now risks amplifying divides in knowledge, divides in trust, and divide in opportunity. The post-Second World War consensus that sustained the global economy for nearly 8 decades is fragmented. In its place stands a mosaic of rival systems, each with its own currencies, data rules, and narratives of development. The shared language of progress is being replaced by the grammar of self-preservation. And plight of Palestinian is a brutal reminder of might is right, law of jungle. If disorder defines the global scene, South Asia lives it daily. From the Himalayan glacier to the Bay of Bengal, the climate crisis, debt stress, and digital divides have become our shared realities. Yet South Asia also possesses something more powerful, a remarkable capacity to adapt. If survival of the fittest is the planet's oldest law, then adaptation is its most enduring strategy. South Asia's people and governments are proving that truth daily. From the deltas of Bangladesh to the deserts of Sindh, they are learning to live with uncertainty, adjusting crops, rebuilding homes, revising budgets, and rethinking policies. The capacity to adopt rather than the absence of risk will define our region's resilience. And it is precisely the spirit of adaptation, of learning, collaborating, and evolving that animates this year's conference. This year's conference is unique, not only because it's being held in Allama Iqbal Open University, for which I am thankful to Honorable Vice Chancellor, but also because under its umbrella, we are convening the 9th South and Southwest Asia Forum on Sustainable Development, co-organized with UNESCAP, the 16th South Asia Economic Summit with our regional think tank partners, Center for Policy Dialogue Bangladesh, South Asia Watch on Trade, Economics and Environment Nepal, and Institute of Policy Studies Sri Lanka, and the Circular Forum co-organized with IGS Japan. Together, these platforms extend our conversation beyond 2030 to ask what sustainable development should mean in a world where old metrics no longer capture new realities. To guide that search, we might recall this year's Nobel Prize in Economics, awarded to Joel Mokyr, Philip Aghion, and Peter Howitt. Their work reminds us that prosperity is shaped not by what societies own, but by what they imagine. Mokyr showed that the Industrial Revolution thrived where curiosity triumphed over conformity. Aghion and Howitt proved that progress depends on creative destruction, the courage to dismantle what no longer serves. That insight holds deep relevance today. The systems we inherited, growth that is dependent on carbon emission, fragile supply chains, trickle-down development, are no longer sustainable. The question is not how to restore them, but how to replace them with models fit for the realities of interdependence and constraint. Disorder then is not just a crisis, it's an opportunity, a call to rebuild differently. That spirit runs through the sessions at this year's conference. Panels on alternative finance, anticipatory resilience, green industrialization, and digital futures all ask the same question: how can societies design stability in an age of shock? A promising answer lies in the idea of the circular economy, which we explore in this conference with IGS and UNEP. Circularity is not simply about waste management, it's a philosophy of resilience. It rejects the linear logic that created our crisis: take, make, dispose, and replaces it with a regenerative one: reuse, redesign, restore. I'm not advocating for recycling only. I'm talking about redesigning. The deeper task before us is redesigning the old order, but rethinking the very rules that shape it is also equally important. The world we built on fossil fuel growth, linear production, and trickle-down assumptions cannot be mended. It must be redesigned for a century defined by interdependence. That same conviction must guide our collective frameworks. The emerging agenda beyond 2030 shouldn't merely extend the Sustainable Development Goals, but reimagine their foundations, align them with the realities of climate volatility, digital disruption, and geopolitical fragmentation. Over the next 4 days, we must weave together UNESCAP's regional review process, the South Asia Economic Summit's policy innovation, and community-led adaptation at the grassroots, creating a new architecture of cooperation built for an age of disorder. Our collective wisdom can help us to think through how to transform what didn't deliver. Colleagues, the 2030 Agenda gave the world a shared vocabulary of progress, but the world of 2050, 2025 looks very different from the one we envisaged in 2015. The Sustainable Development Goals must evolve from a checklist to a compass that points not only toward growth, but towards justice, equity, and planetary balance. The agenda beyond 2030 must therefore ask questions. How do we measure prosperity in a world of climate volatility? How do we define security in an era where floods, heat waves, and pandemics can kill more than armies? How do we build legitimacy in global institutions that increasingly feel distant from those they claim to serve? We may not yet have all the answers, but we share one conviction: progress cannot wait for order to return. We must build order within disorder. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll conclude with 4 reflections as food for thought. First, planning must learn from the climate rather than treating it as an afterthought. Second, reform must be powered by imagination. The transition before us is not merely technical but moral: how to build systems that are leaner, fairer, and more responsive. The above two come alive in the Sustainable Development Expo held alongside this conference. The private sector, too often seen as bystander to policy, is proving to be a partner in transformation, from climate resilient infrastructure and renewable energy ventures to digital inclusion and sustainable production. These innovations reminds us that ideas, when allowed to breathe, can turn disorder into opportunity and risk into resilience. I'll strongly encourage you to visit Sustainable Development Expo in the lawn next to this conference auditorium to see all those innovations. My third point is that cooperation must be understood as resilience. In a region bound by rivers, monsoon, and markets, isolation is an illusion. Our vulnerabilities are shared, so must be our protections. Bangladesh played a crucial role in the foundation of SAARC. In 2016, it was Pakistan's turn to host the SAARC summit when regional politics overshadowed cooperation. With 2 visionary cabinet ministers from the region among us, I would urge them to imagine a revival of SAARC, not as a nostalgia, but as necessity. Shared resilience must be its new purpose. Those who don't believe in regional cooperation may opt out, but those who believe in collective resilience must take the initiative to renew dialogue with whoever is willing and wherever progress is possible. And that brings me to my final reflection. In politics, as in life, people often overrate the role of choice and agency. External events, not even the best laid plans, often dictate where a country's attention goes, even for a great power. But wisdom lies in turning those shocks into reform, in seeing disruption as instruction. Disorder tests system, but it also reveals what still works. As we navigate economic, demographic, and climate transition, this conference is an invitation to rediscover our region's collective ingenuity. The next phase of sustainable development will belong not to those who seek order through control, but to those who find order through creativity. If in these 4 days we can identify even a fragment of order within disorder, then this gathering will have served its purpose. Thank you and welcome once again to the Sustainable Development Policy Institute's 28th Annual Conference.
Thank you, Dr. Solairi. From disorder to order, thank you for such enlightening address. Ladies and gentlemen, we are honored today to have with us distinguished voices from across the region and beyond, each bringing a wealth of knowledge and experience to our dialogue on sustainable development in an emerging world disorder. May I first invite Mr. Muhammad Yahya, United Nations Resident Coordinator and Humanitarian Coordinator in Pakistan, to kindly share his remarks.
Excellency, Minister of Climate Change, Dr. Musadak, Excellency, Ms. Saida, who's advisor to the Minister of Environment, Ambassador Shafkat Abid Suleri, colleagues, thank you very much for having me here today. I also want to recognize the professor here for also hosting us in this wonderful university. Thanks to SDPI, ESCAP, and other partners who were involved in organizing this important 28th Sustainable Development Conference. I'm honored here to represent the United Nations in Pakistan. The discussions are timely. You've heard from previous speakers. The world is changing, and it's changing very fast. With good reason, debates about emerging world order are rife among policymakers, and many of them are here today. How to shape and adapt to this emerging order or disorder are perhaps the biggest questions facing nations, businesses, international organizations, humanitarian actors. We all have a stake in helping shape this new order, and this kind of discussions in the next few days that you're having here will be important in that regard. 10 years into the 2030 agenda, solidarity seems to be shrinking and vulnerability are going up. We've come through a terrible pandemic, and in Pakistan, for those who know this country very well, and there are many Pakistani leaders here, I don't have to tell you about the climate extremes you face in every monsoon. New protracted conflicts globally, mounting debt. Pakistan is not new to that. I'm sure the discussion of debt and the discussion I've been having with Abid Suleri over years has been one of the biggest concerns for financing this country's sustainable development goals, is how you manage this mounting debt. Growth is it's very likely to remain subdued, leaving very little room for investing in people and planet. Official development assistance is falling, humanitarian aid is declining in spite of growing needs. This has been the sharpest two-year contraction in aid for more than a decade. Meanwhile, the debt issue is crowding out essential spending across the developing world. Developing countries paid $1.4 trillion to service debt in 2023 alone. Interest payments alone have soared, squeezing investment in health, education, and climate action. The global public debt is over $100 trillion, with developing countries carrying a significant share of that. And the return of geopolitics accompanied by what have called an age of impunity, and Dr. Suleri touched on this, is challenging long-established norms and values that have underpinned global order for the last 80 years. Navigating, therefore, this apparent disorder and shaping a future which we can all thrive is a question of our time. And policymakers, researchers in this university and others will play a critical role. But also, this disorder brings opportunities. We can shape, we can change, we can influence how we want to live together. But first, allow me to say a few things about the United Nations at 80. As we mark the 80th year, the Secretary General has been very clear. We have a course correction on SDG financing, including SDG stimulus. The target is to mobilize $500 billion to meet the SDGs. And the kind of environment we're in, that challenge becomes much more daunting. The countries that are also facing essentially lagging on the SDGs also happen to be countries that also are highly indebted. So what do we do in this kind of context? And I think one of the things that Pakistan, and with the support of IMF and the region globally, but also this region, has been the idea of shifting away from aid to domestic resource mobilization. And I think it would be very good to hear from all of you in the next few days how that happens. A fair, broader taxation, a better expenditure efficiency, a stronger public finance and management, and tackling of leakages. Essentially, the argument is you have to finance your own development. There is no way out of this. It has to be domestic resource mobilization and better management of internal resources. Second, third, I should say, the era of small projects is over. I think we all can agree small projects, pilot projects are no longer the way to go. What we need are transformative pathways, big changes of national programs, sector-wide approaches. And I'm glad Minister Musadak is here. I can tell you he has told me this, his opinion on this many, many times, the need to have something that is transformative rather than having small little projects that do not have the kind of impact we want to see. Fourth, I think this is why I'm really excited about this meeting happening in Islamabad and a better relationship developing across the region, especially seeing a Bangladeshi advisor here to the minister, is a realization that South-South cooperation is a way to solve some of the problems that you have, especially bringing technical expertise from the region, sharing information, sharing ideas to overcome a similar development challenges you all face. For the United Nations, one of the internal discussions we've been having, and I think one of the things that has emerged very clearly, and my colleagues in ESCAP and others can add more into this, is we cannot be a service delivery substitute for government. It's just not going to happen, and it won't lead to the results we want. The United Nations has to be a support system to the government in providing technical support and helping government deliver its own results. But the days of service delivery to substitute government are also, in my opinion, over. Ladies and gentlemen, the SDGs have never been about charity. They are a blueprint for investment and a shared resilience. If we act together, governments in the lead, the United Nations as a technical partner, development banks, private sector at the table, and civil society and academia holding us accountable, then we have a chance to bend the curve. Let us use this last few days that you're all here with all the ideas coming from all over the region and globally, having technical expertise, researchers in the room. Let's use it as a way of designing a future where we have fewer announcements, but more execution, fewer pilots and more platforms, less fragmentation and more solidarity. Count on the UN to support you, to be with you along this journey. And again, thank you very much for having us here. And we are happy to be part of this discussions. Shukriya.
Thank you, Mr. Yahya, for your insightful words for the United Nations' continued partnership in advancing Pakistan's and South Asia's Sustainable Development Agenda. Now we move to our online distinguished speaker. I would like to invite Professor Kazuhiko Takuchi, President, Institute for Global Environmental Strategies, IGES, Japan, to offer his remarks. So over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Honorable Ministers, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is a privilege to speak at this important gathering of leaders and change makers committed to shaping the sustainable future for South Asia. Today, I want to highlight a critical message. We cannot achieve the SDGs in silos. The challenges of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution are deeply interconnected, and so must be our solutions. South Asia is one of the most climate vulnerable regions in the world. Rising temperatures, erratic rainfall, and extreme weather events are already impacting lives and livelihoods. At the same time, our rich biodiversity from the Himalayas to the Sundarbans is under threat, and pollution, especially plastic and air pollution, is degrading ecosystems and public health. But these crises are not isolated. Climate change accelerates biodiversity loss. Pollution weakens ecosystem resilience, and degraded ecosystems amplify climate risks. This is why we must embrace synergies. Nature-based solutions can simultaneously sequester carbon, protect biodiversity, and reduce pollution. Circular economy models can reduce waste, cut emissions, and create green jobs, especially for the informal sector. Integrated policy framework can align climate action plans with biodiversity strategies and pollution control measures. South Asia has a potential to lead. We have vibrant communities, traditional knowledge systems, and a growing commitment to sustainability. But we need coordinated action, regional collaboration, and inclusive governance. Let me also take this opportunity to highlight the work of the Institute for Global Environmental Strategies, IGES, which is actively contributing to this agenda. IGES is serving as a secretariat for the Asia Pacific Synergy Report, APSR, a new regional initiative led by UNESCAP, UNEP, LOB, and ADB, with support from the Ministry of the Environment of Japan. APSR aims to mainstream synergies into policy and action by addressing the triple planetary crisis, climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution, and accelerating progress toward the SDGs. It will provide practical policy tools, strategic guidance, and case studies to help governments and stakeholders implement synergetic approaches effectively. In addition, IGES is working closely with SAARC-CCI, SACP, UNEP, and other partners to develop a regional circular economy framework for South Asia. This framework seeks to harmonize efforts across countries, promote resource efficiency, and support inclusive green growth. IGES is also supporting the government of Pakistan in developing its national circular economy policy, which will serve as a model for integrating sustainability into national development planning. These initiatives reflect a growing recognition that national and local action, combined with regional cooperation and policy innovation, are essential to unlock synergies and accelerate SDG implementation. Let's move beyond fragmented approaches. Let us build bridges between ministries, sectors, and nations, because only through synergy can we truly accelerate progress toward the SDGs and ensure a just, resilient, and thriving future for all. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Professor Takauchi, for your thoughtful insights from Japan's and Japan's continued commitment to fostering research, collaboration, and sustainable innovation across Asia. Now, ladies and gentlemen, may I request our guest of honor, Her Excellency Ms. Sayyida Rizwana Hassan, Honorable Advisor to the Minister of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Government of Bangladesh, to deliver her remarks. Ma'am.
Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning. So all protocols maintained. May I just move to the written script that I have. I'm actually very bad in reading out from the script because I try to speak from my heart. But as I see that all other speakers are very well organized and look at the script that I have in hand. So I keep on writing and then keep on scripting and keep on editing. But it's actually a very profound and a very important and a very pertinent theme that has been chosen for this year's conference. The world indeed is in disorder, and we indeed are living through a period of instability. It is not only instability at the international level, it is also instability at the regional and national level. The rules-based international order is in crisis. Multilateralism, which is at the heart of SDG agenda, is alarmingly losing ground. And we also see instability, increased instability across the region, driven by inequality, geopolitical competition, often not very fair, and also climate change. We have seen that this region, South Asia, has been shaken by political unrest. From Sri Lanka to Bangladesh to Nepal, we see people taking it to the streets because the model of governance that we have adopted for ourselves have not really responded to the needs, to the aspirations of our people. What is more interesting and gives me hope is the fact that it has become a call of the new generation. So there is clearly a gap between how the rulers think and how this new generation is thinking. And the new generation is exposed. They are connected. So it's not easy to, I'm trying to find out a politically correct term, but I wanted to say bluff. It's not easy to really, somehow convince them, because since they are connected, they know where things are going right in the world and where things are not going right. So they are shaping up trying to shape up new orders. Some of it is going in the right direction. Some of it is not going in the right direction, because reform is not something very easy. It's a process where you will have to give time and there has to be commitment, and we must learn and understand the language of the older generation and the new generation. There are several issues regionally that require regional cooperation and collaboration. For example, air pollution, plastic pollution, water resource management, tackling climate action while protecting our right to development. When I talk about air pollution, Nepal is a great example of good policy in dealing with air pollution with its transition to EVs, which has seen a cleanup of its skies without compromising consumer demand and development. I was very excited and I told Abid that I want to meet someone from Lahore, because I read in the newspaper that Lahore has started to use an air gun, which is surprisingly improving its air quality. If that is correct, I would really like to learn more about it. We have seen increasing frequency of devastating natural disasters, not only in Bangladesh, but across the region. Floods that used to be once a century are now once every few years, causing billions in damages, affecting lives and livelihood of millions. At the same time, we have to be aware of the slow onset effects also taking place. Increasingly, in my part of the world, salinity and soil degradation is impacting our agricultural output. And it's perhaps true for many South Asian countries that are highly populated. Increasing heat is already having significant impacts on productivity and development. Pakistan saw historic floods in 2022, costing the economy upwards of 15 billion USD. In Bangladesh last year, immediately after we took over office, we saw unprecedented scale of flood. I mean, people in Bangladesh are used to dealing with flood, but that level of flood was totally unprecedented. So unless proactive action is taken, these floods will keep on occurring. Bangladesh's National Adaptation Plan requires 230 billion USD, 8 billion a year to be fully implemented. Where will these funds come from? To protect our development gains, we need to be proactive with adaptation. So far, the global negotiations, the global consensus building process hasn't really yielded much in terms of providing adequate fund to countries like ours. So if we do not manage to get from the international community, we can't just be sitting idle. We have to be doing our part of the work proactively at the national and regional level. Without the means of implementation, these plans may remain just plans. And there I see the opportunity of the SAARC countries coming together, exchanging their knowledge and drawing their resources to really develop a regional plan of action on climate. I would also like to say that we, in addition to regional initiative, global initiative, regional cooperation is essential for addressing climate change at a more localized level. Regional agreements and partnerships can help countries address shared climate challenges, exchange knowledge, and pool resources. A world of 3-0, zero poverty, zero unemployment, and zero net carbon emission may be considered as a new economic model for promoting sustainable development. Bangladesh has recently signed the UN Water Convention, recognizing as a lower riparian country. It relies heavily on its upstream neighbors, fulfilling their obligations to ensure fair shares of water from rivers flowing down. Pakistan, too, has felt the threat recently of upstream countries threatening to impede their water flows in violation of international law. It is regrettable that transboundary water flows are being put under threat of weaponization. I think South Asia, as one of the world's most densely populated region, need trust and joint governance for water sharing on fair shares to avoid further instability in the region. This trust building, sharing trust is something we need to reflect in every sphere, not only in water sharing. I had to come from Bangladesh to Pakistan via Bangkok. Others had to come via Dubai. This is not a sustainable regional order, to say the least, and this must not happen given the fact that we have shared history, we have shared culture, and our roots are often same. We have always been talking about people-to-people contact. I don't know how empowering our politics have been for the people, because when the politics takes over, it seems that people who have this friendship and have the network also suffer. Bangladesh, there are also lessons to be learned within the region, and these forums are important. These forums are important for such sharing. Pakistan's solar boom has been an astonishing market explosion of renewable energy development, Pakistan has imported more solar panels than the entire continent of Africa, which is experiencing its own upward trend in renewable energy. In 2024, Pakistan, as I've learned, imported 17 gigawatt of solar panels, making it one of the world's largest markets, and the average price of solar power generation has almost halved. This is the grassroots revolution. Not happening on massive solar farms requiring massive amount of lands, but on the rooftops of the average citizen. That's very encouraging. In India as well, solar has boomed and it has now become the world's third largest solar producer. The interim government in Bangladesh has tried to prioritize renewable energy as target sector for investment and has already issued the Renewable Energy Policy 2025. But there is much to learn from our neighbors like India and Pakistan. We have set a target of 20% by 2030 and 30% by 2040 by increasing our renewable energy capacity. We also have to come together to address the plastic problem. None of the South Asian countries are doing good work in controlling consumption of single-use plastic and in managing their plastic waste properly. Some countries are doing somewhat better than others, but there are global best practices from which we can draw. And as a region, we can draw it together, because the plastic waste that we get in the Bay of Bengal is not the plastic waste that we generate. We, being the lower riparian country, we actually get it from our upper riparian neighbors. So there are areas like climate change, water security, air pollution, plastic waste management, in which we can cooperate. And in this new global order, where disorder is more prominent than order, it's important that we start our activities at the national level and also have regional models for others to follow. At the end of the day, the fundamental challenge in front of us is reorienting our development pathways. Protection of environment and development are often placed as an either-or solution, but rather sustainability needs to be at the heart of our development agenda. Increasingly, we should be looking into decarbonizing our development pathways. This means focusing on things like renewable energy, sustainable design, zero waste, etc. There are massive opportunities for the industries of the future if only we can break from the destructive practices of the present. The world is entering a multipolar phase, as many say, and disorder seems to be where the current roads lie. But in any systematic change, there is also opportunity to reshape the global order into one that is more just, equitable, and fair through collaboration, connection, and solidarity. I thank SDPI and the university and all sponsors of this event for inviting me here and for giving me the opportunity of saying a few words in front of all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your valuable insights and for sharing Bangladesh's inspiring leadership in environmental governance and regional cooperation. And thank you for highlighting flood damages and assessment. SDPI today is also launching its flood assessment report, linking it with district level human development index. Now may I request our chief guest, Dr. Musaddiq Malik, Federal Minister for Climate Change and Environmental Coordination, Government of Pakistan, to kindly deliver his address. Sir, over to you. Sir.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and most of all, the youth sitting in the back. I don't know what to say because everything has been said. I was completely frantically jotting down points and then erasing them because someone else would say them. And then I jotted down some more points and I erased them because someone else said it. So the good news is that nothing remains to be said. The bad news is that my wife tells me that I have what is called an alligator syndrome. Big mouth, no ears. So no matter what, you put me in behind the dice and you suffer. So suffer you must. Well, my job, because I'm at the dice, is to speak, and yours is to listen. But if you get done with your job before I get done with mine, please let me know. Because otherwise you wouldn't be able to get rid of me. Well, because there's nothing left to be said. I just tell you a story. Just a few years ago, the Prime Minister sent us to, right after one of the floods, one of the most devastating floods, to go in the area where the displaced people were. And different people, different ministers went to different areas. So I also went to an area. And there I was introduced to a very young girl. And in the middle of our conversation, she said, "What do you do?" And I was just, didn't know what to say. So I just rushed to say, "I do politics." And she said, "What is politics?" And I said, "Politics is the future." And with empty eyes, that displaced girl by a shrine said, "What is future?" I looked at her, and with my head hanging in shame, and I said, "You are the future." And I continued to reflect on it. You are the future. Your village has been washed away. Your school is no more. One of your neighbors, the most vulnerable women, must have died. And you're here by the shrine, completely dependent upon the food that is served at the shrine by some benevolent people like yourself, the elites. And I had the audacity to look into her eyes and say, "You are the future." And I said, "Shame on me." And frankly, shame on all of us. And this is not just the story of that one girl. There are millions. Just in 2022, there were about 1,700 to 2,000 dead. There were 8 million people displaced. 8 million girls, somewhere, family members, young, old, women, men, devastated. Villages washed away, thousands of years of civilization gone into the ocean. About $30 billion in just 2022 flood. Was it 30 billion? 30 to $40 billion of losses, which is, I don't know, 15, 18% or whatever of that year's GDP. Gone. And I stood there telling that girl that she is the future. Now that statement haunts me to date. And I'm trying to figure out what that future is that I promised to afford her through politics. And I'm also equally kind of distressed by hypocrisy, not just the global hypocrisy. I would take a few minutes and then talk about that as well, but the local hypocrisy. Our hypocrisy, my hypocrisy. I mean, we are a country that takes great pride in having nuclear technology, in having missile technology. We have Nobel laureates. We celebrate Dr. Abdul Salam. We have other Nobel laureates. We talk about Dr. Mahbubul Haq, people who are my friends from civil service. They talk about AGN Kazi, and they tell me how great our civil servants were and how I don't know which country stole our 5-year plan and became I don't know what. And then I ask myself, with all of this scholarship and all of these great men and few women, and may I say few women, and that's kind of manifest in the room as well, relatively, but few women and a lot of great men. It didn't cross anyone's imagination that a little kid should toddle up to a tap open and drink a glass of water? We could build nuclear technology, we could build missile technology, we could get Nobel Prizes, and we had all of these great civil servants, but it never crossed anyone's mind that a kid in Pakistan should walk, open tap, and drink a safe glass of drinking water. Isn't it bizarre? It's just, and I asked myself why. It came in our imagination to defend ourselves, and we defended ourselves. It came in our mind to think about what were those black holes that the Dr. Abdul Salam explored? And we explored them. But it didn't come in our imagination that a little kid should go to school. So no matter how you cut and slice it, whether you look at infant mortality, or you look at maternal mortality, you look at enrollment rates, or you look at completion rates, or you look at 5-year dropout rates, you look at poverty rates, you look at displacement rates, you look at women's, no matter what you look at, the answer is the same. And it's not the lack of technology, it's not the lack of resources, it's the lack of imagination. It just did not cross our mind along this journey that these are also matters of security. So I would, before, they say that when you point one finger, you're pointing 3 at yourself. So I pointed 3 at myself before I start to point fingers. I'm a little bit perplexed with this entire environmental kind of regime. I'm perplexed. I've been parts of many different ministries, but I've never been a part of an idea which is so freaking devoid of outcomes of any sort. It daunts me. And I ask myself if, in fact, this entire theater is about travels and conferences and jargons and English words. Is that what this is all about? I go around and I talk to my partners, my friends, my colleagues, people at my ministry, and I say, how long? And they say, 40 years, 50 years, 70 years. We celebrate 50th, 70th, 60th, 30th. And I ask them, show me one outcome. One, I'm not asking about 5 or 3. One outcome, one that has improved. And there's dumbing silence. I ask questions, they tell me Geneva. They tell me COP. No matter what question I ask, answer is process. How can process be an answer when outcomes are the ones that are devastating that little child? And I don't know how we are going to, in our collectivity, through one conference after another, after another, after another, of one conference of parties, and then pre-conference of parties, and then pre-conference of parties, with people from all over the world getting into planes and gathering together at some exotic place. I ask to find the solution for that young girl, and I get totally fogged. Oh, smogged. I get totally smogged. I don't get fogged. When I was growing up, and I grew up in Lahore, we used to go to school and it was foggy and misty. People used to write poetry about that little morning mist. Do you guys see that anymore? Is anyone from Lahore? Do you even travel to Lahore? Would you dare to travel to Lahore in about another month? The entire passage would be smogged out. So we used to come to Murree and Islamabad and when we were growing up, and this Margla Hill, it had green parrots everywhere. Beautiful green parrots. Where are they gone? Has anyone seen one lately? We used to chase fireflies, jugnu, in an urban environment. Has anyone seen one lately? They're all gone. It's like someone robbed us. We robbed ourselves of our childhood, of our romance. It's not just the devastation. It's also the romance that has gone away. It's the poetry, it's the singing. Everything has been washed away. Everything has been smogged. I mean, I don't recall from the top of my head, but there's a list that gets published, the SDG ranking list. We are what, sir, 167 out of 180 something, right? Don't recall. But we are 160 something out of 180 something. And there's also another index, Human Development Index. And about 165 countries report, and we're what, 146, 7, something like 47, I stand corrected, not 46. What is a bad number, ladies and gentlemen? What is a bad number? 166 out of 166. I wonder. This conference is about not present. I'm lamenting present and past. And this conference is about future and disruptions and what might it do moving forward. So let me break your little hearts and let me start kind of pointing fingers now. First of all, multilateralism is dying. You've seen it. And it's lending its way to bilateralism and mostly now unilateralism. We just faced some. This multilateral kind of idea, this new polity or new politics of the world is not moving in that direction. You're going to see more wars and you're going to see more weaponization, and Her Excellency just mentioned the weaponization of water. And let me tell you, to all of the people who are listening, there's not just one country at risk. All of the countries that are lower riparian, once the precedent is set, once you establish that upper riparian people have the right to control the water flows to lower riparian, all of the riparian, lower riparian countries are at risk. So they say, speak up or hold your peace forever. And I think we're at about that moment where we either speak up against weaponization. What are you going to do? Weaponize air now? After water? What are you going to do? Stop wind from blowing? So speak up. If conference is the only thing that we are going to do, then speak up and speak the truth. You want to talk about the economic future? Many, many moons ago, 40, 50 years ago, again, I don't recall numbers, so I take liberties with them with the hope that no one in the audience would also know. And if I give numbers with precision, they would believe that I'm actually giving the right numbers. But about 56 or 58% of the people, 30 to 35% of the people controlled about 50 to 60, 56 or 57% of the world's wealth. Now less than 10% of the people control 80%, 90% of the wealth of the world. Look at the economic disparity. It's not just between countries. It's also amongst people, the haves and the have-nots. The breach between these two bipolar populations is increasing with every passing day. You want to talk about social fabric? I just gave you numbers. They are numbers from one country: 8 million displaced, 12 million displaced, 9 million fallen under new people fallen into poverty. That's going to last several generations. This is one country. Now you multiply it with as many developing countries as there are, and you start to get a sense of what is happening to the social fabric. with urbanization, with floods, with devastations, with cyclones, with displacements, with schools getting washed away, with children and kids not getting education, with women dying in the birthing process, with people not having a clean drinking, one glass of drinking water, safe drinking water. You can well imagine what is happening to the social fabric. And obviously, environment is my business, and I've already spoken about floods. We are like a little valley at the, almost like at the foothills of Himalayas. The temperatures are rising. For every 1 degree temperature that our plains, 1 degree rise of temperature in the plains, there's about 2 to 3 degree rise of temperature in the northern areas. What do you think is going to happen? Exactly what has happened this year, exactly what happened 2 years ago, exactly what has happened about 5 to 7 times over the past 20 years. The glaciers are going to melt. You lie as a valley at the foothills of those glaciers. Your entire system is one day going to get washed away with too much water or too little water, or first too much water, then too little water, then too much water. And that's going to create a theater of food insecurity, your crop failures. My hope personally is with technology disruptions. And I think that moving forward, we would be able to solve these problems. As I said, 3 fingers pointed at us. Let me say that 40% of the carbon emissions of the world are produced by 2 countries. 2 countries. 40% of world's carbon emissions are produced by 2 countries. And 10 countries produced over 75%. 10 countries of the world produce about 75% of the total carbon emission. But look at the hypocrisy. The same 10 countries get 85% of green financing. Not people who are getting affected. Not countries that are producing less than 1% carbon, less than 1% too much. But less than 1% of carbon emissions, 0.5% or 1% is being produced by Bangladesh, by Pakistan, and all other countries. But people who are consuming and eating environment, those 10 countries, which are emitting 75% of the carbon dioxide equivalent, the same 10 countries are getting 85% of the world's green financing. Look at the hypocrisy. Not the countries. If you consume, you pay. You want to buy a burger, you freaking pay. You want to have chaat masala, you pay. But the world, these 10 countries want to consume climate and not pay. In fact, charge everyone else. All of the green financing they take, all of the oxygen they consume, and all of the carbon dioxide and methane they emit. And yet, Brutus is an honorable man. Look at CBAM. Look at global politics. They tell us this is a green compact. CBAM, the 1990s or 70s industrial policy, is the new green compact, where they're going to require countries like Pakistan and Bangladesh and all other countries, they're going to require them to go green without financing. They're going to consume financing, we are going to go green, and if we don't do that at their borders, they're going to tax us. I ask you, what is industrial policy? How is this green? What part of this is green? Green would be if we had financing and it's like creating a hump and saying, I'm going to take all of the resources for you to get over the hump. And if you don't go over the hump, you're not going to be on the other side. How brilliant. Isn't it? Look at the hypocrisy. And the same people who claim green or who count green or who want to go green or who want to tell us green, other people who are inculcating these policies. Everyone knows, Yaya has told me multiple times that multilateral funding is going to probably go down, right, sir? Probably go with the New World Order is going to go down. We already know some of the major domos who are saying, we're out. So we are saying, okay. Well, we were told that we are interwoven just about a decade ago. The narrative, if I were here a decade ago, I would be saying, guys, we are all interwoven into one global fabric. It's one big village. And if you, and just about a few years ago, when I was dealing with another ministry, the price of LNG, because of the wars, because of the geopolitical shifts, I politely call them, the cost of energy went up to about $130 million cargo of LNG became $160 million. And I looked at the world into which we were interwoven as one fabric. And I said, what about us? And they said, what about you? Go figure it out. And I continue to wonder that our coal is black, but some of the countries start to burn the same coal, but it must have been yellow with orange polka dots. So when you go and you open your mines and you restart your coal plants, that's coal which is yellow with orange polka dots and essential for security. And what about us? And the answer is go figure it out. So that's kind of the new world order, the disruption as I see it. When we get devastated because of you consuming oxygen and emitting carbon dioxide, they tell us take debt. 70% of our federal budget goes into debt servicing. They say take debt. We say, okay, are you giving us new debt? They say, no, no, no. We're repurposing the old debt. And we say, which old debt? And they say, the one that you had for education and health. How about we repurpose it so that you can take care of the devastation? We say, repurpose debt, which means less education. Are you telling us this girl and all of the girls should not get educated because we should repurpose education money for building up the infrastructure which is devastated? Are you telling us that women who are already in our part of the world, the maternal mortality, shameful? Are you telling us that more mothers should die in the birthing process because you're going to repurpose that money for building up the infrastructure which is devastated? They say, hey, $20 billion, $30 billion. Well, the numbers are so amazing. You know, you begin to say, whoa, $30 billion, and why not? Let's clap. So ladies and gentlemen, let's clap. That's the new politics. So these themes, this blended finance means you're on your own. This debt repurposing means you're on your own. And we sit here in Islamabad and wonder, take more debt, go where? How do we service this debt? What do we do with this debt? More debt for devastation that's not caused by us. So I get perplexed. But I've not given up. I mean, every round that you go through, you know, you have a choice. After every round, you can take the towel and you can wipe your sweat and throw yourself back into the ring. Or you can at some point in time throw in the towel. And we are not going to throw in the towel for the sake of our own children. And I'm inspired by a few examples. I studied the innovation ecology of Finland many moons ago. I think it was in 2004. And I found out that in the 1990s, 80s, and 90s, Finland was a forest economy. And at the turn of the century or before that, in the 1990s, just to protect their forests, they came up with the world's highest environmental standards. And by the time I studied them in 2004, they were exporting 1/3 of the world's environmental technology. 1/3 of the world's environmental technology, because they came up with the highest environmental standards across the world. The technologies that they created did not exist anywhere else. Just about 10 to 15 years ago, the two most polluted cities in the world were not Delhi and Lahore. They were Shanghai and Beijing. Right now, Shanghai and Beijing export about 70%, perhaps 70% of the world's solar technology, which is not their indigenous technology, which is German technology. But the demand function was so taxing that they basically scaled it to the extent that no one in the world can compete with them. No one in the world can compete with them. Many countries have tried. So if Finland can do it, if China can do it, and this is a 10-year-old example, then why can't Pakistan do it? Who has a more taxing environment in the way of devastations than Pakistan? So all we need to do is unleash the creative power of these young men and women, people who are just finishing universities, people who have ideas and ideals and ideas in their mind, people who are not cynical like me, people who believe that the world can still be changed. If we can just resource them, people who are sitting in the back, if we could just resource them when they graduate and give them a little bit money and a lot of technology to play around with, they would come up with the solutions for Pakistan, which do not exist anywhere else in the world. And who knows how many unicorns are going to just rise from this one single hall. It's impossible to tell, because these unicorns, all of them start in garages. Let this university be that garage where those great ideas start. And let our policies be empowering these young men and women to come up with those new sciences, those new technologies. I did my PhD in 1995. That was a different freaking century. It wasn't even this century. How can I solve the problems of this century? You are going to solve the problems of this century, not me. So we need to empower you. So all of these gray-haired kind of consultants should be replaced by you. And all of this writing of the reports should give way to startups by young starry-eyed men and women. And that's basically the support that we need from the fund. Excellency, that is the support that we need from the United Nations. Just unleash the powers. Forget about debts and forget about this. I say grant, you say debt, you say mitigation, I say adaptation. Let us solve our problems. Any adaptation idea where the private rate of returns are high, we want to give the custody of those ideas to these young men and women. And that is, if it were, that is going to be the only strategy of the new climate change ministry. Now, we're in the process of putting it together. We're in the process of putting together those shark tanks and money, and I hate this word shark tank, but whatever it's worth, green, I don't know what tanks. But we are in the process of raising capital for these competitions between these young men and women to come up with the most creative idea. And we're inviting people from within Pakistan and internationally to keep their money in their own pocket, but to show up and say, hey, you Fatima, or you Muhammad, we are going to invest with you. How about 20% of your company for $100,000 or $500,000? That's the strategy for the Ministry of Climate Change. We'd be very grateful if other things come our way. But we are committed to green corridors. Our problems are the same, whether it's basically the Fargano Valley in Uzbekistan, right? Am I pronouncing it right? Or Indus Valley. Fargana Valley or Indus Valley. whether it's drying seas or melting glaciers. We are going to create a green corridor between these valleys. We are going to do collaborations with the willing. We're going to put together a green university, which is not going to be an infrastructure, which is not going to be 100 acres of land in Islamabad. It's going to be my conference room, which is obscenely large, where you put together the graduate programs, the PhDs from all of the universities within Pakistan and across the region to come up with creative solutions and provide grant funding. So, Excellency, if any support we need, it's for that green funding. We're going to have this green connectivity. We're going to have a green marketplace. And as Her Excellency just mentioned, it's not just about carbon, it's also about plastics. 130 kilograms. 130 kilograms per capita is the use of plastics in Europe. Sorry, 139. 131 in the United States, 129, right? Am I giving the right numbers, madam? You're sitting in the corner. Am I giving the right numbers? 129 in Japan. You know what it is in Bangladesh and Pakistan? 6 to 7. You know what is it in Africa? 2 to 3. So people who are consuming and actually creating this plastic waste, why don't they pay for it? How about extended consumer responsibility? You consume, and that comes to the shores of Bangladesh. How about you pay for that? I mean, we are willing. We know that virgin plastic is cheaper than recycled plastic, but why don't you give us the money for the viability gap so that we can process? But trust me, we are not going to make you make Pakistan or Bangladesh or any other country the garbage bin of the world, where you consume and just throw the trash at us. It's not going to happen. As I told you, I forewarned you, I have an alligator syndrome. And I just looked at the watch and I realized that I was true to my word when I began. So I would wind up by saying, particularly to people sitting in the back, look, development is generational. Climate systems span over centuries. And nation building takes decades. None of them is short term. We're building the future. We're building a future for our future generations. Kids sitting in the back who are going to graduate this year or next year, they're probably going to retire in 2075, 2080. We don't know what 2045 is going to look like. So our only hope is resilience. This resilience that we will have to build in our youth, to brave it out into a future unknown. We are in the process right now of writing the history of future. This conference is about future. This conference is about disruptions. So this conference is about writing the history of future. So I would say, ask not what we can do. Ask what it would take. What you can do and what it would take yield two completely different answers. And when you're doing nation building, you don't ask what you can do. You ask, what would it take? And I would only give you this resolve of the government that we are going to do it. We're going to do with our partners or without our partners. If we do it with our partners, it may take us 10 years. If we do it without the partners, it may take us 20. But by God, we're going to do it because we're doing it for our children. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Musaddiq Malik, Federal Minister for Climate and Environmental Coordination, for your eye-opening yet inspiring words and continued leadership in Pakistan's climate smart planning and resilience and the regional cooperation efforts. We now move to launch of publications, a much awaited tradition at every Sustainable Development Conference. Ladies and gentlemen, this year we proudly launched three important works. One from fragility to resilience, enhancing sustainable development, a flagship SDPI publication capturing key insights from the 27th Sustainable Development Conference and beyond, focusing on actionable strategies for resilience building and inclusive growth. Second is the Journal of Development Policy, Research and Practice, Volume 9, SDPI's peer-reviewed journal reflecting rigorous research, regional collaboration, and fresh perspectives on sustainable development policy. The third and very important publication is that is being launched today, complements the post-2025 floods assessment by presenting a pre-flood baseline of human development. At district level, it is titled as Provincial Development Monitor, a Derived Human Development Index. Now, to mark the formal launch of these publications, I would like to invite Her Excellency Rizwana Sahiba, Dr. Musaddiq Malik, Ambassador Shafkat Kakakhel, Professor Dr. Nasir Mahmood, and our distinguished guests to kindly move forward on the stage. May I also request Dr. Abid Qayyum Saleri, Executive Director, STPI, and SDC Director, Ms. Uzma Haroon, to present the anthology and journal. Sir, please. May I request to flip your books so that we can launch other publications? Next. And the third report that we are launching today. May I request Dr. Abid Saleri to distribute the shields as well? Shields. Ladies and gentlemen, this marks the beginning of our 4-day journey of ideas, partnerships, and
This is a coffee book which is compiled by different diplomats serving in Pakistan. So the picture is taken by them. And this is the compiled by Mr. Imran Shaukat and Mr. Ali. Collaborated with them. We thought that we should give these coffee table books for them. Can I have more?
Yes, we did books. Ladies and gentlemen, this marks the beginning of our 4-day journey of ideas, partnerships, and policy innovation under the banner of 28th Sustainable Development Conference. We have planned 11 plenaries, 32 panels, 9 fireside chats, and capacity building hubs. Thank you all once again for your presence and participation. The tea is served outside. Thank you so much.